What makes somebody want to fight another person for a living? I don't know, because I'm afraid of confrontation. But that's the question at the heart of every single character in professional wrestling. Some wrestlers are in it for the fame, and others do it for the money, but most simply want to be the best in the sport. But in order to relate to our favorites, we need to know where they came from. Guys like Bret Hart and Daniel Bryan were the everyman who fought hard for everything they earned. Jim Cornette used his mom's money to assemble a tag team, and the Shield broke into WWE wanting to deliver justice. And Bastion Booger likely came from wherever the hell a Bastion Booger would come from. Some wrestlers have awful origins and they somehow overcame them, but quite a few were doomed right out of the gate. I'm Andrew with WhatCulture, and here are 10 of the most terrible backstories we've seen so far. Number 10. Kane. It would likely take a 500-page book and a couple of college courses to try and explain Kane's backstory in a satisfactory way, but let's try in about 20 seconds. Kane was the victim of an accidental fire inside of a funeral home when his half-brother, the Undertaker, caused the incident. As an aside, Undertaker is a strange and kind of really mean thing for an Undertaker to name his son. Anyway, Taker maintained his innocence and insisted it was Kane who did it because he was a pyromaniac. Well, what we knew for sure was that Kane was horribly burned that day and that he had ungodly scars all over his body and that he needed a voice box to talk. We knew that because he basically lived in a basement for years to hide his pain and plot his revenge against his brother, as one does. Or maybe none of that actually happened. Kane also somehow dated a woman named Katie Vick, and it was revealed that Taker started the deadly fire on purpose, and all those scars on Kane's body, they were of the emotional variety. Perhaps it's up to the viewer themselves to determine which Kane is the real Kane, because the writing for him has been so insanely inconsistent that I guarantee Vince McMahon himself would not be able to tell you what the real story is. Number 9. Hornswoggle. WWE introduced Hornswoggle to the world by having him climb out from under the ring and interfering in Fit Finley's matches. They then treated him as a real-life leprechaun. We had no other ideas on who this mysterious person was, and quite frankly, we didn't want to know. We just wanted him to go away and leave us alone forever. However, when we did learn more about him, it only made our lives off worse for it, just as we suspected. Horny's father was Finley, but it took a while to learn that fact. For a time, we believed he was the grunting offspring of Vince McMahon. So really, Finley was a lousy father, as he didn't seem to mind his kid hanging around incredibly close to hand-to-hand combat on a weekly basis. Somehow Horny, despite not being able to form a single sentence, found his way from one arena to the next all across the world week after week. Eventually, Santa Claus himself gave him the ability to speak, so in that case, Santa was an asshole. Number 8. Nails. A man named Nails, and now if a parent is going to name their kid Nails, they should at least spell it with an S, was given a second chance at life and then immediately committed a bunch of crimes right in front of millions of people. Nails had been locked up for years for some unknown reason, and when he got out of the joint, he somehow proved to the World Wrestling Federation that he was athletic enough to be a professional wrestler. Did he wear that orange jumpsuit to his job interview? He didn't seem interested in the money though, which is strange since he likely didn't have an income the past few years. He only wanted to get in the business to fight the big boss man who conveniently, get this, used to be his prison guard. Despite how ridiculous that is, what made things extra bad is that Nails accused Boss Man of violently beating him while he was in prison. So really, Boss Man should have been the heel here. Also, you'd think the court system would be a better place to handle these serious allegations than a nightstick on a pole match at Survivor Series, but justice is often served in mysterious ways. Number 7. Kamala. While Kamala had already wrestled in various territories by the mid-1980s, he was introduced to the WWF audience in 1984. In a Piper's Pit segment, Freddie Blassie showed off his newest possession, the Ugandan warrior Kamala, along with his handler Friday. It was incredibly racist and quite confusing. So Friday was a missionary who continued to dress as if he was on a safari and wore a mask for really no discernible reason. Kamala was said to know absolutely nothing about wrestling, as he never competed in a match in his life. He only knew the word brutality, so they basically kidnapped a man to wrestle? And not only that, but Kamala was the chief of his tribe, so hopefully nobody there was dependent on him. Oh, and yeah, he was also a cannibal. Number 6. Atom Bomb. You know, I'm no history expert, but I can't help but think that Atom Bomb's career is based off a house of lies. Will he ever atone for his sins? We were told that Mr. Bomb was a survivor of the 3 Mile Island accident, which was a partial nuclear meltdown. Conflicting studies have come out about the health effects from the incident, but one thing is for sure, and that Atom Bomb was absolutely the only person in that area whose eyes and tongue were permanently discolored by it. Bomb was so upset and traumatized by this nuclear meltdown he survived that he decided to fight grown men to work out his anger issues. One must also wonder what the odds are of someone being named Atom Bomb who just happened to be from the island at the time. Obviously, the viewer can come to their own conclusion about the honesty of Mr. Bomb, but for now, I remain a bit skeptical. Number 5, the working men. We're gonna lump a few of these men together here as they could easily take up their own separate list. Now, as we've seen throughout WWE history, they pay incredibly poorly. The men and women who fight for the company apparently need part-time jobs just to keep the dream of being a wrestler alive. We've seen a dentist in Isaac Yankem, a Duke the Dumpster Drozy as a garbage man, a repo man, a ballroom dancer, and a former NHL and MLB MLB player, and that's just to name a few. Now these job characters are confusing for a lot of reasons. Where did they find the time to train during their full-time job? Why did they always insist on wearing their work uniforms into a combat sport? Couldn't Isaac Yankem have fought without wearing scrubs? While a majority of these characters didn't work out so well, you can honestly say that all of their backstories are complete garbage. Number 4, Jeff Jarrett. Double J was just a man who had a dream. He wanted to make it big and sell out arenas with thousands of people chanting his name. But no, not in wrestling, this is country music. You see, Jarrett's master plan was to become a professional wrestler to enhance his music career. This is obviously because, wait a second, that doesn't make any damn sense. Well, I guess Double J got to have one of his songs played on Raw. You would think that fighting full-time across the country would be a really bad way to get into the music industry, because it takes up a lot of time and you could be really badly hurt. Well, Double J never did reach the big time as a musician. He instead resorted to hitting people with guitars and calling them slapnuts for a living. That's gotta be somebody's dream out there, right? Number 3, Zeus. Decades after the release of No Holds Barred, Zeus may still be on the loose. So Zeus was played by actor Tiny Lister. But when Lister came to the WWF, he was Zeus, the character from the film. This guy was mad at Hulk Hogan, the wrestler, because in the movie he lost to him. Did he forget to read the script before signing on? Anyway, he was so infuriated by this writing decision that he wanted to beat up Hulk in real life. But as far as we knew, he hadn't actually wrestled ever. He was just some actor who was in Beverly Hills Cop 2. Hogan and Lister had a couple of atrocious tag matches against each other, and then Zeus left the company for good. 2 years later, he showed up on an episode of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air where he put over that hot up-and-comer Will Smith. Number 2, the Kiss Demon. Fun fact, one of Eric Bischoff's favorite bands ever is Kiss. Actually, that fact is probably only fun if you're Eric Bischoff. In the late 90s though, not many people under the age of 40 shared that same fondness for Kiss. Instead of being a responsible adult and buying a ticket to a Kiss concert on a night off of work, Eric subjected millions of wrestling fans to watch the aging rockers during the main event of Nitro. Oh, but it gets better, because you see, having them on TV, that wasn't good enough. He worked with the band to create an actual Kiss character named the Kiss Demon. So Demon's story is still a bit of a mystery, as it was never fully explained who or what he was. He just seemed to materialize out of thin air from a coffin. Did Gene Simmons kidnap some man and then force him to wear makeup and compete in a professional wrestling ring while they continued to tour? If you think about it, that is really the only logical explanation. Number 1, suicide. Suicide is from a video game. Now I feel I could just stop there and go do something else with my day, but maybe I should just elaborate a little more. One thing TNA has always struggled with is merchandising. I mean, even ECW had multiple video games on the PlayStation and Nintendo 64, but TNA never landed one until Impact, say it with an exclamation point, was released in 2008. It seemed they rushed that thing out the door as half the roster wasn't in it, but you could play as Suicide. Wait, who was Suicide again? Well, like Arya Stark, he was no one, as the video game developer Midway made the dude up and then put him in a game. Now, that would have been fine had that just been the end of it, but to promote Impact, the video game, Suicide came to life and showed up on the television show Impact. Whenever this happened, Mike Tenay freaked the hell out as if it was the greatest thing he'd ever seen in his life instead of stating the obvious. How the f is that possible? A bunch of people ended up playing Suicide until it was revealed that it was TJ Perkins, which made absolutely no sense since he wasn't even in the company when the character was created. Well, I guess it still makes more sense than somebody jumping out of a PlayStation 3 and traveling to Orlando to fight people on a weekly basis, but just barely. Well, that's the list. Thanks for watching. Got any more terrible backstories? Tell us about it in the comments. I'm Andrew with WhatCulture, and you can follow me at Andrew Socek on Twitter, and make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And you know what? I hope you have a non-terrible day.